Hey guys, welcome back to the Being Mother Hustler podcasts. This is another solo episode that I'm really excited about because I am committing this entire year to do an extra episode every week. Usually we have one episode with a guest, but I really want to commit to an extra episode this year in 2019. And it is Thursday today and recording this, and I'm going to release it probably tonight. Welcome back to another solo episode of the Being Mother Hustler podcast. I'm your host, Kareen Mills, and I'm your mindset and performance coach, keynote speaker, mama of 3 boys, and of course, your podcast host and chief mother hustler, joining forces with other mother hustlers to mother the world. So, guys, this year I am committing to all of you to put out there an extra episode by myself, for myself, and for all of you to really maximize and optimize the time we have together on this podcast. And today, and probably there's going to be a part 2 or part 3 of this series, I'm going to tell my story because I think it's time for my listeners and a lot of people to really hear what I'm all about and what story I have to tell and where I'm coming from, how my drive is this way, and what the things, what things drive me, right? Hey guys, welcome to another episode, a solo episode by me for you. This year, I am committing to an extra episode every week, no matter what happens, no matter what it takes. I'm going to record an episode for you, my dear listeners, my mother hustlers, my sisters, because I think it's important to really unload a lot of my thoughts. Today is the day that I get to tell my story. I've been speaking in a lot of events this week, and I felt like it's super fresh. And all I've been really doing this week is just tell my story and my journey from, my first decade in my life to the second decade of my life to the third to the fourth, which is my most recent decade. And I'm turning 40 this year. By far, the fourth decade of my life has been the most meaningful decade. So this episode is going to talk a lot about my first decade, one of the toughest decade of my life, probably the most profound decade of my life because it's coming full circle in the greatest sense, not in a bad way. Even though it wasn't such a good childhood during my first decade, I truly attribute a lot of the things that's happening to me because I'm turning it into a positive. So my name is Kareen Mills. Let me reintroduce myself. I'm your host of this podcast, Being Mother Hustler. I'm also a mindset and performance coach. I think they're both intertwined together. And I am a keynote speaker. My second keynote is happening on February 9th over here in the Pacific Northwest. So for those of you that are outside of the area, Pacific Northwest, I'm currently in Portland, Oregon / Vancouver, Washington. It's on a border town, so we can cross the river and go to both places whenever we want. But I tell you that introduction because I haven't always been that way. Just like a lot of you, we don't drop in this planet and we don't get born in this planet to this world to be who we are today, but we go through a journey, and today is the day that I tell you my story. So I was born and raised in the Philippines. Made in the Philippines is like how I like to joke around it. I was made there, and my first decade, obviously the first 5 years of my life, I don't really remember a lot, but I'm starting to remember a lot as I heal my wounds from this decade. So I grew up in the Philippines in, pretty poor family. We weren't really rich. My mother doesn't have a high school education. My father did not have a college education. And so it's a family that is really just scraping by, if not, we're like minus every month, right? And so when I turned 6, I started really understanding what was happening around me. And my mom and dad used to wrestle a lot. I know that's such a weird word to use, but it's literally what was happening. And there were 6 of us siblings, and we were exposed to domestic violence. My mom don't have a high school, not even a high school education. She came from a very poor family out in the province in the island called Cebu, Philippines. So that's the island I came from. And my mom literally had to go to the city and start working at an early age. And that's how my mom met my dad in the city. My dad was going to college at that time. And I think my mom was selling stuff off the street, and I don't know what exactly she was doing because I didn't really get the entire story of that. But when my mom and dad married, my mom stayed home and my dad had a job and was making pretty good money at that time, given that he didn't really have a college degree. And so my mom was just really a homemaker. So my mom had 6 total children. I'm the 4th of 6. There's 3 sisters, and meaning there's 3 brothers and 3 sisters. So there's 3 and 3. And during, I think it was about when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, I was really exposed, or maybe I've been exposed before, but I didn't really understand quite yet what exactly was happening. So when I turned 6, I started really understanding that I was living in a situation that was not ideal. And looking back, I didn't really know that that wasn't ideal. I didn't know the difference. And so when it was such a tough childhood looking back now, but when you don't know the difference, you really just like live your life and think that that's just normal, but it wasn't. And so my mom didn't work for a while, and then my dad started gambling, and throughout that vice that he had developed, of course, he became a womanizing person. And trust me, I love my dad because he's my dad, but at the same time, he didn't have a lot of things that he brought to the table after he quit his job, and then he started doing these awful things. And so my dad started gambling and drinking and, womanizing, and really maltreated my mother. And in the third world country, it's almost, I'm sad to say this, that it is almost just okay for a guy to do that, because the women were raised that once you're married, it's a commitment to your husband that no matter what happens, that it's okay to put up with everything. And so I think a lot of older generation men took advantage of that culture. And so my mom to this day is still married to my dad. But let me just give you an idea of what my first 10 years look like, so that you can really get to know me. And so I at the age of 6, 7, 8, 9, and I can't really tell you exactly what age that was, but I just remember that my mom would make, so she never used to work, but she had to hustle. I think my mom had side hustles. All of it was side hustles because she was always scrambling and struggling so hard for money. I remember because my dad used to steal her money from her. And so she would sell chicken, and she would wake up at 4, 3 a.m. to kill these chickens and dump them in a boiling water. And I know that sounds so horrible, but that's just how they did it. And then they took the feathers off and they cleaned off the chicken, and then they cut the heads and put the heads together. They could sell the heads by itself. And then I mean, this was my mom's life, and I watched this growing up. And she would go to the open market and sell these chickens. And then my dad would steal all of her money, including her capital, to buy more chickens. So she would run out of money, right? And so when she runs out of money, she would like go to the place where my dad would gamble and drink, and she would go there and sell cigarettes and really just like mother hustle what she can sell in the Philippines while we were little, so that she can feed her children, because we weren't dependent on my dad anymore. We weren't depending on him anymore, because not only that he didn't have a job, but he stole my mom's money that was supposed to be for us, to raise us, to maybe send us to school, or just for whatever, to survive. So even that money he would take. And so my mother would end up in this, there's a lot of loan sharks in those countries, and they would charge $6 for every $5 that you borrowed, and they called it 5-6. And so my mother would end up like owing a lot of money from these loan sharks at home. And I remember that like these people would always come around and collect from my mom, and my mom would borrow from Peter to pay Paul, and then borrow more from Susie. And then there's like, she's always like upside down, and she'll always scramble to figure out, okay, where am I going to get this money from? And so my mom did not have an outlet nor a community to plug into. I think the only community and only outlet she had was us, her children. And it makes me sad now, because like as a 6-year-old, I really wanted to fix everything for my mom, but I didn't have the power to. I mean, imagine as a 6-year-old child, and you want to fix everything for your mom and you can't. That's super frustrating, and it really affects you psychologically as a child. And luckily, psychologically, in a greatest sense, because I'm doing something good about it now, and I'll get to my 4th decade in a little bit. But then my mom, get emotional. So something happened recently, and my sister Daisy described this very detailed thing that made me remember a lot of my emotions that I had to go through. And something happened recently. My sister and I and my other sister in LA, we were talking about how, you know, our life was when we were a child. And I remember Daisy said that, remember the time when our parents used to wrestle and I would carry you, Kareen? You guys were little, and I felt like, gosh, Daisy, you're also little. Like, I can only imagine for an oldest sister to go through that. Shoot, I knew I was gonna cry when I tell you guys this story. So Daisy described this, like, remember when we were little, and this is my oldest sister, I used to carry Kareen around my waist when they started wrestling and screaming and fighting. And then I had Rosie on my other hand. So I had Kareen on my waist, around my right side. And then I would have Rosie on my left hand to run away from whatever was going on with my mom and dad. And like, sometimes you forget these details. And to be honest with you guys, I forgot about that detail. And I think we tend to remember just the okay part of our life. And so as soon as Daisy described all this, like I immediately remembered every freaking details of it. Like, I said to Daisy, I started weeping and just bawling, because my sister said that, like, you girls were little, but I remember she, you know, as an adult now, I remember my sister was also little, and my older sister, and had the responsibility of taking us away from harm, you know, her two little sisters. And so I remember she's older, of course, like she's about 45, 46, I think. And so I remember her saying these as if she was still in that moment. And I felt really bad because I forgot about it. And then I didn't remember until she recently described that moment. And I remember so vividly, as soon as she described it, her little face as a young teenager that had to have the responsibility to take care of her two younger sisters. And my oldest sister is such a brave soul, and like, she went through a lot because she had to be our mom, because our mom had to deal with a lot of things. And I remember when my mom ran out of money, my mom would literally feed us like stinky chicken. I laugh about this because it's the best chicken popcorn that I've ever had in my life, because I knew how much heart my mom put into it. I remember when my mom ran out of money, she would she literally would look through her chicken and just feed us the ones that she couldn't sell, which was in the verge of like being thrown out. And she would cut these chicken in like little small pieces, like a popcorn chicken. And she would wash them with vinegar. And then when she was done with washing them with vinegar, she would bathe them with garlic powder and real garlic. And I don't know what else she did, but that damn chicken was the best chicken to this day. I think because I know what went on with that chicken before that chicken was made. And I think my mom didn't know that we knew. Like, I don't think she knew that we understood exactly what was going on. I think I was the kid that was impacted the most because I'm in this critical age, right? So to where I'm starting to understand and see everything. And so I remember that my mom would not eat until all of us ate because she knew there wasn't enough food. And then after, and the siblings would just like literally save a little bit of our food and not eat it all so that our mother can eat. I mean, that's just, thinking back now, that's like such an amazing thing without even talking to each other, that we would do all that for our mother because we knew what our mother was going through. And so, and we wanted to fix it as much as we could within our power. And so that was really my first 10 decades, guys. And I just wanted to share this life that I have leading up to my current decade, because it's, even though I'm crying right now, it's not a sad story, actually. It's going to get better and better and better. And it's such an amazing story. So I want you to stay tuned and listen to the rest of my story in my solo episodes, because I truly believe that our stories are meant to be shared to empower other people and to give other people permission to share their stories, because my stories may impact you, but your story may impact a different audience, a different kind of person, a different kind of audience and tribe. So anyways, when I turned 9, I started having and creating this escape whenever all these things was happening. And my escape was always thinking about America. And I came to the US when I was 20, in the verge of turning 21. So that's going to be my next episode on my solo episode. But I remember when I was 9 and 10, at that time, we knew that my grandma, so my Uncle Doug came first to America as a Navy, US Navy, and then he sponsored my grandmother and grandfather on my dad's side to come here. And once they became US citizens, they also sponsored their kids, which my dad was one of them, and we waited about 12 years to actually receive the letter that we were ready to come to America. But in the meantime, because it took 12 years, around 9 or 10, I would always dream about coming to America. And that was like my escape from all the troubles that I have been exposed to. And I would think about Disneyland, which I've gone to 3 times now. And I would think about the Hollywood, which I go a lot because I used to live in LA, and my sister and my mom lives in LA, and a lot of our family do. And like, I would always dream, that was always my escape, is to come to America. And so with that being said, I'm going to end it there, because there's going to be the second decade of my life that continues to dream about America, and how everything came about. Since about my second decade is when we actually, towards the end of the second decade, is when we actually came to America. And this was when the law of attraction started happening to me, before I even understood that it was the law of attraction. And so with all of that said, I sincerely appreciate all of you for being here on my podcast. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to be heard, and also giving me the opportunity to hold space for all of you mother hustlers. And for those of you that are not connected with me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, all across the board, I'm Kareen Mills. So at Kareen Mills is my handle. And I truly would love your feedback about this episode, because I'm pouring my heart out in this 4-part series to tell my story from one decade to another. And I hope you truly enjoy this series and can continue to really start understanding of where I'm coming from, who I am from the core, why do I do what I do, what drives me, why am I so motivated to help and hold space for mother hustlers, and all that good stuff. Thank you so much for listening today, and I'll see you on the flip. Have an awesome day.